You know, I've been thinking a lot about that, saying poor people have big hearts and rich people have small hearts. It's something you hear quite often, and I think it's meant to highlight how poor people are often seen as more generous and compassionate, while rich people are thought to be selfish or cold. But when you really dig into it, that statement isn't as simple or as true as it seems. It's more of a stereotype than a fact, and people tend to say it to take some kind of moral high ground. The truth is, human nature is far more complicated than just linking someone's financial situation to how kind or generous they are. Let's be honest, there are kind-hearted people who are rich and there are selfish people who are poor. It's not like someone's wealth automatically makes them good or bad. There are so many factors like upbringing, personal values, and life experiences that shape how a person behaves. It's not just about how much money they have in their bank account. One reason this idea exists is that people believe that when someone has been through tough times, they develop more empathy. Take someone who's lived their whole life struggling with financial problems. They know what it's like to go without, so they might be quicker to help others going through similar hardships. It's a natural reaction when you've walked that path yourself. There's actually some science behind this too. Psychologists have found that people from lower income backgrounds are often more attuned to the emotions of others. They're more empathetic because in many ways their survival depends on their ability to connect with and rely on others. So they're more likely to be generous with what little they have. For example, imagine someone who's barely making ends meet but still goes out of their way to share a meal with a neighbor or helps a friend in need. They understand what it feels like to struggle, so they're more likely to offer help even if they don't have much to give. That kind of direct, personal generosity is easy to see and feel, and it reinforces the idea that poor people are more giving. Now, on the flip side, you have rich people. It's easy to see why some might think that wealthier individuals are less compassionate. They don't have to worry about where their next meal is coming from or whether they can pay the bills. In a way, that wealth can create a bit of distance from the everyday struggles that poorer people face. If you've never had to worry about basic needs, it can be harder to truly understand what it's like for those who do. But that doesn't automatically make someone selfish or mean. In fact, many wealthy people are incredibly generous. They just tend to give in different ways. While someone with less money might help their neighbor directly, rich people often donate large sums of money to charities, foundations, or causes that support people on a larger scale. Think about people like Bill Gates or Warren Buffett. They've pledged to give away most of their fortunes to help solve global problems like disease, poverty, and education. So while they might not be sharing a meal with a neighbor, their donations are making a huge impact on thousands, if not millions, of lives. The difference here might be visibility. When a rich person donates millions to a charity, it's not always something you see up close and personal. It's more behind the scenes, and maybe that's why it doesn't always feel as genuine or heartfelt to some people. But just because it's less visible doesn't mean it's less valuable or less generous. That said, there are always exceptions. You do hear about wealthy people who seem to hoard their money, living lavish lifestyles without giving much thought to the struggles of others, and that definitely adds fuel to the stereotype that rich people have small hearts. Another important thing to keep in mind is how different cultures view wealth and generosity. In some cultures, sharing resources and supporting the community is seen as a moral duty, regardless of how much money you have. For example, in many Asian and African cultures, it's common for wealthier family members to support extended relatives or even entire communities. In these societies, there's often a greater emphasis on communal living and sharing, which can influence how people view wealth and generosity. In contrast, more individualistic cultures, like in the United States or parts of Europe, tend to place more importance on personal success and self-reliance, which could affect how people think about giving. At the end of the day, the idea that poor people have bigger hearts and rich people have smaller hearts is an oversimplification. Human beings are incredibly complex, and their behavior is shaped by so many different factors beyond just how much money they have. Yes, people who have struggled financially might be more empathetic and more willing to help others because they understand what it feels like to go through tough times. But that doesn't mean rich people can't be generous or caring. In fact, wealth allows some people to make an enormous difference in the world through philanthropy. And just because their giving looks different, more focused on large-scale issues or done behind the scenes, doesn't make it any less valuable. It's really all about perspective. If you go looking for examples of poor people being generous, you're going to find them. And if you believe that rich people are selfish, you'll likely find examples to support that view too. It's what psychologists call confirmation bias. We tend to see what we expect to see. But the truth is far more nuanced. Whether someone has a big heart or a small heart depends on so much more than just their financial situation. It's about who they are as individuals, the values they hold, and the choices they make in their lives. So, rather than making assumptions based on whether someone is rich or poor, maybe it's better to look at people as they really are. Complex, multifaceted, and capable of both kindness and selfishness regardless of their wealth.